What a beautiful morning. Well, here it is. The sun is high. Don't start singing, Neil. Not this early. I'm on one of my favourite paths along the canal, I know. But it's just a great place to come when it's a sunny day because there's plenty of shade for the barking machine. And it's quite peaceful. It just means that I can get a nice photo walk in. A quiet one, make some pictures, read some of your letters. Right, let's get a sketchbook photo to start the day. F4, oh my word, 1900th of a second. You're shooting into the sun, I know I am. But back along the path, there we go. A sketchbook photograph to start this morning's walk. And I have an unusual poem from the path today. To start the show.
For life is quite absurd, and death's the final word. You must always face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your sin, give the audience a grin. Enjoy it, it's your last chance anyhow. Life's a piece of shit when you look at it. Life's a laugh and death's a joke, it's true. You'll see it's all a show. Keep 'em laughing as you go. Just remember that the last laugh is on you.
Today on the photo walk.
Life is finite and it's so important to treasure every moment and not get bogged down in trivial things, which is so easy to do, but things that aren't really important. Retain a sort of... The other thing I would say along with swimming is retain a sense of humour.
There's a reason the poetry from the path this morning is from Monty Python, because during my conversation with the celebrity portrait photographer Harry Borden today, this is the concluding part. We started last week. Harry reveals his true feelings about what's important in life. In spite of a life behind a lens making the most extraordinary and often celebrated pictures of the celebrated. I think it's an interesting conversation because celebration is definitely not what you are left with as you ponder your life. During that moment, you travel beyond what you find on a road map, if you get my drift. And I don't want that to sound all morbid, because our chat today is anything but. In fact, I was thrilled by just how revealing he was. You don't always, or rather I don't always, get to talk with a guest about personal stuff, and we do that today, we really do. There's a cyclist coming. Pups, stay here, come over here. Good boy, sit. There's a good boy. Morning, morning. So, as Eric Idle sang, you must always face the curtain with a bow. This, I think, is a sneaky glimpse behind that curtain for Harry today. But there's much optimism in our chat. And actually, on that note, we have some Hoptimism from Denmarkland too. And yes, I did pronounce the word with the letter H. All will be revealed in a letter from Hegaard the Dane. Uncle Lars is back in the mailbag. If you don't believe in the power of a photograph, then Jim Farmer from Americaland just may change your mind during the first letter. Chris Rawlings has put AI and digital art into the same boxing ring with a question later on. We have some biscuit tin answers to who would you want past or present to make your portrait. And Valerie Jardin returns for our monthly Teach Me Street feature. She is in black and white heaven today. We do have a last letter of the show as well, which comes from one of our, well, I'm going to say regular script writers, almost. It's fantastic how you are embracing writing into the show. Thank you so much for that. Are you ready to walk then? Steady yourself first, though, because I'd like to say thank you to Art Helper.
My sincere thanks to those who help keep this show on the path each week, including our friends at arthelper.com. Have you ever wondered what it might be like to actually sell some of the amazing pictures you make? Making photographs, of course, is the enjoyable bit. We're all agreed on that, right? But then comes the part most of us put off. Writing the Instagram post, updating the website, sending the newsletter, finding the words to explain why a picture matters, and that's where Art Helper comes in. The clue is in the name. Upload your photograph and in moments it can write social posts, newsletters and website copy that actually sounds like you. No staring at a blinking cursor wondering where to begin, just a head start. It's becoming much more than a writing tool as well. Art Helper is a place where you can keep your portfolio together, and if you're thinking, well, yeah, I could sell some of this, create realistic wall mock-ups of your work, connect with other artists in a like-minded community, and build your creative life in one place. And if you're worried about AI using your pictures for training, don't be. Art Helper's Art Protection Guarantee means your images are never used to train AI models. And can you tell me which other platforms are promising you that kind of behaviour? You can try it for free, and if you use the code PHOTOWALK, you'll get 30 days off the pro version on them. Just head to arthelper.com, there's a link on the show page, and my thanks to Art Helper for supporting this podcast.
See, these would be the mornings. I would love that barge I talk about, that canal barge. I can just imagine, moored up just here, next to the side of the, next to the door, just through these reeds, those ones there, perfect. Plank onto the barge, cooking up some bacon butties first thing in the morning, perfect. Write a bit in the journal. Maybe get the laptop out, edit a few photos, perhaps, I don't know. Enjoy a coffee. The best part of this show is seeing the photographs and the stories and the moments you discover on your own walks. It's never really been a series of interviews or questions and answers as a show. Well, not in this form anyway. I like to think of it as a companion to your own time behind the camera, wherever you are in the world and whatever you are finding through your viewfinder. Having said that, whether you've got a camera over your shoulder or your hands in the washing up bowl at the moment, I hope you enjoy today's show, our chat with Harry Borden, Valerie Jardin, and the letters in the mailbag too. The address for the show is stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, if you would like to send in your thoughts about photography or pictures that you've been making along the paths that you've been treading. We are starting out with a letter into the mailbag from Jim Farmer, from the land of stars and stripes and the wonderful country music clubs. Neil, bear with me, this is somewhat of a long story, but I thought you might like it. It shows the power of a photograph in a somewhat different way. I'm all ears, Jim. Do you know the American singer-songwriter Emmylou Harris? Jim, do I know Emmylou Harris? Yes, of course. Mum and Dad had albums, or at least one album. I'm not quite sure, because what happened in our house, Jim, was that a record would go on the turntable, an album, and it would stay there all week. And you'd play it over and over and over. It felt like you might have a collection, even if you were just listening to one side. And actually, on that note, funnily enough, before we continue, my youngest bought his first ever turntable on Vinted. I was so proud. He bought it to listen to a record that his friends had bought him for his 16th birthday a couple of weeks ago. He is a massive Lily Allen fan. I appreciate it's probably the wrong way round in the chicken and egg debate. I mean, most people might buy the record player first and then start collecting records. But however it happened, I was so pleased and proud to see him enter the world of analog and records and vinyl. I got home from a walk, and there he was, proudly unpacking it and playing the first side of the most warped record I think I've seen for a long while. It was like, what are they called? Moguls? Are they moguls? On a ski run. Anyway, he said, "Look at this, Dad." I said, "Yeah, God, you've got a record player. And it does 2 speeds," he said. And I said, "Why do you think it does that?" "Oh, maybe because you might want to hear it quicker to get to the next track," he said. which I suppose when in the great world of podcasting that he does listen to, you do get the opportunity to listen to things at twice the speed just so you can get through more. No, I said. I tried to explain the concept of 33 1/3 and 45s, but when I started, when I even attempted the singles chart and how that thing worked, that you buy a single, he looked at me like I was mad. But why would you have a record with only one song on it, Dad? You'd have to keep changing it. Anyway, back to Jim's letter. Sorry, stereophonic diversion there. Emmylou Harris, says Jim, has been very popular in country music since the early 70s. I started listening about 74-ish. I've seen her several times, and in one of the photos that I've attached, you'll see me holding an 8:10 colour photograph. I'll put these on the show page today. I took it in the late 70s, possibly the 80s, not quite sure, but it was at one of her concerts, and probably with my trusty Pentax MX and Kodak 400 film. It's grainy for sure. Anyway, fast forward to last Friday night. She was playing at a concert in Charleston. My daughter, Hannah, and I went. Hannah's a huge fan also because she grew up listening to my music as we drove to numerous soccer games. She's 28 now. I found the photograph, a little worn and tattered, but it was still okay, and I took it with me to Charleston, hoping to get an autograph. I figured that Hannah could use her youth and energy to talk her way into that request. Sadly, she had no luck. There were some grouchy security guards and show officials. But after the show, we wandered around behind the main old building to see if we could find someone. While I was just standing around thinking, we're out of luck here, I saw a person walking down from behind the main building carrying 2 music cases. Turns out he was the fiddle player. His name was Amos, and he had a very strong British accent. I'm not quite sure what a strong British accent is. Is this a strong British accent? Or do you mean maybe a very southern one, or a very east or west one, or a northern one? He was from London. Oh, he could have been an Essex accent. That can be quite strong, a very London accent. Anyway, I asked how in the world he'd ended up playing fiddle and mandolin for Emmylou Harris, and he said, long story, or probably he said, it's a long story, mate. Anyway, I showed him the photograph, and he said, wait there for a moment. Let me see what I can do. So we hung around for about 10 minutes, and eventually he did return and said, follow me. He took us by the grouchy security guards. He said, oh, you again. Amos said, they're my friends, and they're going in with me. So we enter into a small kitchen, and there is Emmylou Harris at a table with a plate of brownies. What, an entire plate. She says, come on in, and was the nicest person you could ever imagine. I showed her the photo, she looked at it closely, and then she recognised a band member that was behind her. She said his name, but I can't remember that, but he did play with her in the early 70s, then left and came back in late 1980. So the photo, she reckoned, had to be late 1980. She remembered it. I told her I'd saved it all these years and hoped that one day she'd autograph it, which she was only too glad to do, dedicated it to me and Hannah. After that, she said, don't you all want a picture? That was my best attempt at Emmylou Harris. So we got that as well. I asked where she was playing next, and she said, a few weeks' time, actually, a memorial concert for another musician that had sadly died a while back. Then she started singing one of his songs that we all knew. What, Jim? You had an impromptu concert, an a cappella concert from Emmylou Harris, just for you. You couldn't have imagined a more friendly, down-to-earth person to talk with. No rush, no I don't have time, none of that. Just come on in and say hey. So you have a photograph of me holding the now autographed 46-year-old photo of Emmylou Harris. Then one of me and my daughter, Hannah, with her. So 46? Yes, 46. You've done your maths right. Emmylou, I don't know why I doubted it. Emmylou just turned 79, and this is part of her farewell tour. Her voice is still so good, though. Well, hopefully it'll be like the farewell tours that Tina Turner did. They were never ending. So, says Jim, there we go. The power of a photograph. All the best, Jim Farmer. Jim, what a story. And isn't it funny how a photograph can just keep working really long after you press the shutter? And when I say working, it keeps that power, doesn't it? That potency. That's definite proof of the power of a photograph, as you say. This is now, and I know you shouldn't have favourites, but this is now one of my favourite letters, I think. 46 years ago, simply a picture taken at a concert. Then one evening, decades later, it's a conversation starter. And a backstage pass, I might add. Well done you, fantastic. And those photographs will be on the show page today. What a great story from Jim. I love stories like that. If you have some stories from your life, photographic obviously would be a nice angle on them, but sometimes, I don't know, you might have something else you think we should know about. Stories at photowalk.show. Stories at photowalk.show. What's your... bit of an aside, what's your midge spray of choice? I have been using Smidge. I've just run out of Smidge, but it's usually really, really effective. I've been bitted alive today. God dear. I was just taking a second out making a photograph, one of my sketchbook pictures. I became aware of a sort of sharp pinprick on my leg. I looked down, there was a thumping great horsefly thing. What have you got, pups? You got stick of the day? Go on, you go past with your stick of the day. Have you got it? Go on then, take it away. Well, I don't want your stick, not that one. God, and it was, that was sharp. I thought that's just a reminder. Get some Smidge or get something else. These horseflies this year, they are... I had one the other day, a bite the other day actually, at a wedding. And I could not stop itching. Itch, itch, itch. I know you're not supposed to. But by the end of the day, it was like it was like a football on my arm. Are you exaggerating slightly, Neil? Me? What, me? Harry Borden is back for the concluding part of my chat with him in a moment. There's a new biscuit tin question this month, a conversation starter, a random question from my random biscuit tin box of randomness. And this question that I've got this month is, if you could have any photographer make your portrait. I thought this was very apposite, actually, when you consider that Harry Borden was our first guest of the month. If you could have any photographer, portrait photographer, make your portrait, past or present, who would it be? A trickle of answers have come cascading in so far. First up, Madge Ellis. Where have you been, Madge? Huh? It's been at least 3 years. If this goes on much longer... we'll be doing an Emmylou Harris kind of photograph in 46 years' time together. I'd choose Annie Leibovitz. Not because she's photographed famous people, but because she seems to find the story underneath the face. Ooh, I like that expression. I'd probably spend the entire sitting, though, wondering where to put my hands and being a bit awkward. But I'd love to see what she could possibly see in me. And David Lloyd. Neil, without doubt, it would have to be Jane Bowen, a legend, latterly working with Olympus OM1s carried around in a wicker basket or plastic carrier bag, depending upon who's reminiscing about her. I know when I reminisce about Jane's work, it's always that she would turn up to photograph somebody like Margaret Thatcher with her cameras in a Sainsbury's bag or something. But all pictures taken in natural light, says David. Just look at her images of Orson Welles and Samuel Beckett to appreciate her genius. I will, and I will put a link, actually, on the show page to those pictures. So thank you, David, and thank you, Madge, for those. Two legends. Of course, Madge, you get the actual opportunity to ask, don't you? Because sadly, Jane is no longer with us, but Annie is. So the question stands, if you could have any portrait photographer, make your portraits, past or present, who would you choose? Right. The concluding part of my chat now with Harry Borden, the renowned British portrait photographer, who I think gets quite personal in this final part, including his why. In this part of our conversation, I'm keen to know a little more about him as I know it sounds a bit strange, but I think as portrait photographers we do turn into interviewers, particularly if you're photographing the most extraordinary people. It's a confidence that I think is gained as you do more and more of them. And of course, having worked for decades, I really wanted to know how that's possibly changed how Harry photographs and how photography has impacted that whole skill set of communication. So here's Harry Borden, the concluding part.
Do you think you have become a better interviewer? Have you become a journalist through your photography? I suspect you probably have.
Well, it's probably something you've had to, I imagine, wrestle with, interviewing people. I was terrible because I am quite a talker. A good example was Margaret Drabble, who I happened to photograph around the time that I split up with Jane, and I'd lost so much weight. I'd lost 15 kilograms. So I was like a skeleton. And I got this commission from the Observer to go up to North Devon, where she lived. She still has this house right on the coast. And I went up there with my assistant, French assistant, Noémie, and did the job and spent the day with her, and we got on really well. And she was asking me all about photography and portraits and so on and so forth. And then sometime after that, I was then in a much better place. I'd got together with my youngest's mum, Abby, photographer, and we were sort of having a Sunday roast, and there was a copy of the Sunday Times, and in the magazine there was a short story by Margaret Drabble, and it said 3 photographers, and it was from the perspective of an actress. And one of the photographers, she said, described him as having a handsome, long face, and that he was painfully thin. And he had this assistant called Emily, a French assistant called Emily. And so I sort of emailed her and I said, would it be presumptuous to observe that the character Andy might have been based on me? And she said, how did you guess? And so I have a good rapport with her. So I said to Fred, we should interview her for the channel because she's a creative person. And that was the first interview we did. So we went around to her house, and I just loved talking to her. She's so interesting. And also, I think she was kind of reluctant, I think, or not guarded, but certainly well-versed in marshalling her answers. And she doesn't like to necessarily talk about her sister, A.S. Byatt, who they're both writers, and they've had this kind of they didn't really get on that well. And I was sort of blundering in with my questions and then sort of filling up all the space with my verbiage. And then, we got it back, and then Fred said, this is absolute garbage. You've just been talking, not letting her get a word in edgeways. I mean, Fred could tell because he was there. And so I have learned, and I am much better. And so if you look at our interview with Lynn Barber or Joe Meyerowitz or Zed Nelson, photographer, I have got better. And that's what you have to do, is you have to let people elaborate, don't you? And then you just gently, it's a bit like surfing a wave. You have to, you don't have any control. You just have to sort of just make minor adjustments, and then just let the people who are looking on the channel are interested in what Zed's got to say, not what I'm pontificating about.
David Attenborough talks about the natural world making life worth living. After spending a career photographing people, has photographing people's relationship with the natural world become another way of photographing humanity? Because that's something that you've started doing through your mental health project, or you did through 4 Hugs Wide, which is a wonderful, wonderful project. I love it.
Oh, I'm glad that resonated with you.
It does, very much.
Yeah, I mean that was very frustrating because we had an exhibition. So 4 Hugs Wide is about this. The name comes from one of our subjects who was describing an oak tree, And he said, over there, that one, he was trying to find the right words, and he said it's about four hugs wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just sort of wrote it down. I thought that's a good name for the book.
Yeah.
And I was contacted by somebody that I photographed for The Observer, who'd written an article about male circumcision, and she'd been married to a guy from Turkey, and it had ended up splitting up their relationship because she didn't want her boys to be circumcised, and he did. And she was worried that he was going to sort of unilaterally take them to Turkey and get them circumcised. But that's by the by. I mean, we had this good connection, and we became friends. She lived in Clovelly in North Devon at the time.
Oh, beautiful place.
Yeah, and she contacted me out of the blue after the pictures had been published in the Observer, and asked if I'd be interested in doing a project on trees and people who she's become a really good friend, Morel Thornton. And so she's kind of an academic and writer, and she researched and found all these people. So you've got charcoal makers, you've got who make charcoal in the traditional way, you've got people that make tools, chainsaw sculptor, a hedge witch, just people who just love forests, trees, the arboreal world. And I've got to say, it is amazing spending time in woods. I mean, it really is very difficult. There's an energy in there, and I find that we haven't done any for a while, but that when you go there, you're not looking at your phone. I am sort of slightly in the groove, in a flow state, sort of looking for pictures and looking for places to photograph them. But you just feel really invigorated. It's a sort of quasi spiritual experience. Yeah. I mean, the trees are like the vaulting of a church building, aren't they? They're majestic. And so Morel kind of brought me into that, and it's become a big project. And we had an exhibition. So basically, I felt bad because I sort of felt that she was just organizing the project. And so I said to her, why don't you have some creative input? And why don't you write a poem about each and every encounter to be used as a counterpoint to the photographs? And that's what she did. And they're really great. I'm not an expert on poetry, but they were considered great by the people who went we had an exhibition in Great Torrington at the Plough, which is an arts gallery. Yeah. And two people came down from the Royal Photographic Society, and it was going to be put on at the Royal Photographic Society, and we were going to record wind going through trees. And then some of the people that we photographed are, there's artists, so that we're going to have their work, sculptures in amongst all the portraits and the poems. And then the pandemic happened, so the project has been on the back burner. And then I contacted there's a Jack Arts. They basically organise doing outdoor exhibitions. So during the pandemic, it was exhibiting billboards all around Bristol, which was kind of terrific. But at the moment, I'd like to really see it out there, because I think it's more needed than ever, that kind of mindset. We're kind of sequestered from the natural world to our disadvantage. And I think it's I kind of grew up, although I was born in New York and then my parents came to London, for the last 52 years, I went up to London to be a photographer and stuff, but I was always a country boy at heart. And my parents, no longer with us, but we just got rid of the farm that I kind of grew up on, that my parents had for 52 years. And so I'm super aware of how important it is for our mental health to be feeling, to look at the horizon, to be just fully connected and aware of our senses. We were talking about going for a walk and stuff and listening to stuff or podcasts or having phone calls and so on.
Yes, we were.
And you're right. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and so on, but I do try to occasionally just go for a run with the dog and just feel the atmosphere of the wind.
My wife says she has to hear her footsteps, otherwise she's not involved in the process of running.
Exactly.
I don't know whether you went to it. It was Amazonia, wasn't it? Salgado's last.
I didn't see that. I was aware of it.
Yeah, you've triggered a thought there when you said that one of the ideas in the exhibition was to hear the wind flowing through the trees, and one of the most incredible experiences And I would go so far as to say it was a really strong mental health experience as well, was as you weaved your way in between the boards and the rooms, you heard speakers just bringing you the sound, not necessarily of the picture, but of the atmosphere of the Amazon. There were drums, there were birds, there was the sound of silence, if that can be possible. It was just, it was delicious. I thought, as an experience, it was just a multi-dimensional experience, and I loved that about that. So it's such a shame that you didn't get the opportunity to do that.
I need to get out more
for the future.
Yeah,
that may well. Mental health actually sits underneath so much of that work without becoming preachy. Were you surprised how many people instinctively do feel connected when they're amongst trees? I think you've already addressed this in some respects, but when people see pictures of it, their engagement with it, because you might say it's very difficult to get involved or engaged with a picture of a tree, but I think it is. I
think you're right. I definitely, for me, one of the kind of reasons I found it appealing was I read this book by Oliver James called Affluenza, that he wrote. I bought it appropriately enough at a car boot sale in terms of my carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And the premise of the book is that we're encouraged to live our lives as atomized individuals in competition with each other. And a bit like what I was talking about with Tony Adams. And in reality, it's much better to be part of a greater whole. That's what Alain de Botton talks about. I think in the religious buildings, the reason they move us is they sort of take us out of ourselves. And for me, I did this thing called Vipassana meditation, which is 10-day on retreat.
I know it. We talked about it only recently. Yes, I find that fascinating. Right. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, I would really recommend it. I mean, it's quite hardcore because you're kind of observing sensations on your body, and it is quite an extraordinary experience. It's almost like sensory deprivation. You have to be kind of emotionally quite robust. I think, I think some people might struggle, but I would definitely recommend it. But I in this book, he really talks about the fact that, I mean, I'm not a Marxist. I sort of completely understand the enormous power of and the engine that is capitalism and progress and so on. But he sort of talks about selfish capitalism needing as many people in the workplace as possible and encouraging us to sort of seek goals that are kind of like deferred rather than do things for the intrinsic pleasure of doing them. And that's the thing with being in the woods and more generally taking photographs and choosing the life that I lead. I try and do things for the intrinsic pleasure of doing them. So, I'm very quixotic, but I've got another project. I had a detached retina about 2 years ago, or about a year ago. Yeah, and I had a vitrectomy where they put a bubble in your eye and it presses.
This is my biggest squeamish thing. I had to have eye drops the other day done for a particular eye test, and that I had a sleepless night the night before. I can't imagine what that would be like. That's everything like in a Saw horror movie come into one for me.
No, absolutely. But I just using that as an example, I've done a project called Dislocation.
Right.
And I photographed the surgeon who carried out the procedure. And as I was talking to him, I started crying because I realized how emotionally vulnerable I'd been, because I went in thinking there was nothing wrong, and then I was given leaflets with a guide dog. And as a photographer, so much of what you do is dependent on having good eyesight and so on. And it also enables you to think about the nature of reality and how we have all these other senses. We're very, very overly concerned with sight, and yet there are all these other senses, these other sound. I mean, I consciously try and, through doing that Vipassana, I consciously try and use those other senses. And, our brain kind of takes all this sensory information and then concocts a very subjective view of reality. And it's sort of quite fascinating. So with the Dislocation project, I did these self-portraits of me sort of after the operation in a process of recovering. And then I've sort of kept all the ephemera, like my hospital wristband and so on and so forth. But I only mention it. I mean, nothing may happen with that. But I basically am interested in doing projects that just occur to me and seem like interesting forays. I mean, another one I've done, which is yet to come to fruition, is a project about suicidal ideation. Again, sort of mental health. You probably haven't seen anything about it because it's not on my website. No. Yeah, I photograph people who live with suicidal ideation and have now reached a place where they are quite able to kind of manage these thoughts and feelings. But it's such a taboo subject, and it's not really clear about whether we should be even talking about it, because some people think that it sort of leads to more instances of people taking their lives. And I do think it goes to the essence of being human, because our brain is basically sort of an operating system that is perpetually making us paying attention to things that make us unhappy or agitated. And that's how we kind of get things done. So it's kind of a dual-edged sword. But I just made these portraits, and that was exhibited at Photo North last year up in Leeds, and it's something I'd like to do more with. But unfortunately, also, again, because of this stigma, it's very difficult to find people who are happy to talk about, these dark thoughts that they experience and so on.
It occurs to me that a photographer's life, particularly yours, can be a life of 1,000 journals, pictorial or written, because everything appears. Well, to me, many things become in my mind. Oh, I could do a project on that. I could do a project on that, and it might be lighter, it might be darker. And there's this wonderful. I've called it a passport to curiosity that I think we hold as not just photographers, but as deeply creative people, of which you are, because you've shown that through your writing now as well. It's a joy to have, isn't it? But I do sometimes receive mails or messages or have conversations where people say, well, I'm very afraid because I seem to have lost that ability to find my creativity. I've got a mental block on this. Well, what sort of advice do you give to people at moments like that? I
would, I sometimes feel very flat, particularly at the moment, I think, because everything feels very uncertain. I mean, I would also, Oliver Burkeman's quite good. There was I don't know if you've seen he's got a column. I think I've sort of subscribed to his newsletter, and he was a recent one that I read. He said that we've always felt that it's coming to the end of the world. And if you remember, back before the millennial bug, for instance, in the year 2000.
Oh God, yeah.
I remember when I was in Australia with my ex, who's Australian, and we were going to be traveling in a plane on the year 2000, the New Year's Eve. And we actually changed our flight because we got so freaked out by it. But actually, broadly speaking, things have probably never been better than they currently are in terms of, most people's. But conversely, more people sort of feel a sense of unease. And so I think we're kind of materially very blessed, but very, very anxious. In answer to your question, one thing I do that I find very useful, I'm quite an optimistic sort of person by nature. I just am that way. And the things that I've had to deal with, the challenges of actually, in a Nietzschean sense, I think made me stronger and more able to kind of more stoic. But for me, I find swimming really good.
Wild water swimming, or
definitely, that's
so
great
in the elements.
Yeah, that I'm a big fan of. But also, I mean, I swim more than usually at least a couple of times a week. I'll just do 30 lengths. When you go on Instagram or social media, you invariably don't feel as good as you did when you picked up the phone. It's a negative. You just think, well, I've been at the very least, you think I've wasted 5-10 minutes or worse. Like I see my son and he's just scrolling on reels or whatever. Without exception, when I come out of the sports centre having had a swim, I always feel energized. And so it's very, very difficult to remember that. But exercise is a wonderful sort of panacea. And like you said, walking your dog, I mean, I've got my dog downstairs, I've got to take him out. I mean, that's a wonderful way of having that connection. I mean, I really think it's just important to be mindful of relationships, because that's all that really matters. That's what I learned through having sort of chased material success and wanting to be successful. in the very competitive hierarchy of celebrity portrait photography, I realized that ultimately it doesn't make you happy, even getting material things and not, no longer having to worry about paying the rent to the same extent as you do. Like, I came up to London and I was on the enterprise allowance scheme, and I was struggling, but actually looking back, I was actually really happy, because it's about the process, and really all that matters is your friends and your family and your relationships. And that's what I realized. And so I cherish my relationships. So one of my friends yesterday is a guy called Andrew North. He was actually abducted by the Taliban, and he works in New York now. And I've known him since he was 19. He was the Afghan correspondent for the BBC. I mean, if you Google Andrew North, you'll see he's a famous writer, really. He wrote a book about his time being abducted and his time over there. I just sort of messaged him, and getting back to the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about making an appointment to have a phone call, I sort of said, are you around? We had a half an hour catch up. And I do think it's really important to kind of cherish these relationships, because they're precious, and they're more precious than any material thing. And ultimately, that was the sad thing about my dad, saying about my dad being a narcissist. I remember us going to visit him when he was on his deathbed in Wanford in Exeter, the local hospital. He's off his head on opiates. And we came in. It's quite funny, this. Me and my son laugh about it. I had all my children. We all came in to see Charlie with my mum. And he looked around at all of us, and he looked towards my mum and he said, "Who are these bananas?" And it was kind of interesting, and I think it was probably the drugs, but it was very revealing, because he didn't really have a meaningful connection with us, because our relationships were it was quite adversarial, and he was a difficult guy, and it was quite competitive. And I just think, I also had the death of my best friend when he was 52. He had esophageal cancer. And I was lucky enough that I moved down here, and we spent a lot of time together. We would play snooker, we would go for bike rides and stuff. And then he got his diagnosis, and it was more snooker and less tennis and mountain biking. But me and another guy were there at the end of his life, taking him for chemotherapy and radiotherapy, because he'd sort of become a bit estranged from his family. And nothing was left unsaid. And he's a very traditional guy, and we argued a lot about things. He was really pro-Brexit. I was less so. I was more of a Remainer. We'd have these arguments, but, I remember sort of saying to him, mate, I really love you. And we had this kind of easy thing. Everything just kind of melted away at the end, and nothing was left unsaid. And it was a fantastic gift in a way, because it sort of it reinforces this sort of notion. And if you experience it, it's very powerful, that really life is finite, and it's so important to treasure every moment and not get bogged down in trivial things, which is so easy to do, but things that aren't really important. Retain a sort of, the other thing I would say along with swimming is retain a sense of humour.
Oh God, yeah. Which sometimes is hard.
Life is absurd.
Yeah, it is absurd. I mean, what's the famous song? Always look on the bright side of life.
Yeah,
life's exactly. A bit of shit if you look at it. I feel you've dug very deep in the last two questions, really, talking about, or the last couple of moments talking about your very good friend and your father. But I'm going to ask you just one final question, and I'm going to ask you to dig deep on this one as well, if you will. What, and this may be an answer to do with creativity, your photography, your life, your partners, your children. I don't know where this might go, but I'd be very intrigued to know what your why is.
I think it's really important to have. I think probably the why is a sense of accomplishment. I'm motivated to do these things because I think definitely the why is about the process. It wasn't initially. Initially, it was about sort of maybe bolstering up a very fragile and brittle sense of myself, an insecure. That friend I was telling you about, I was always jealous of him because he was so handsome and girls liked him and everything. And so I had to try and make myself interesting in a different way. So that was probably the why at the beginning when I was a young man. And then somewhere along the way, for me, it's about the process. It's about sort of living an authentic life and basically doing things for the intrinsic pleasure. Like in that book, that Oliver James book, it's really important to kind of realize that it's not about postponing your life to some date on the horizon when things are going to be great. It's really about kind of choosing how you spend every minute of the day. And, you know, I'll probably go for a swim now, or I don't really waste time. You know, like last night I don't particularly like watching. I kind of quite have a Protestant work ethic, so I probably am reluctant to do stuff that I sort of regard as frivolous, but sometimes I'll cut myself some slack. Found myself watching Serena Williams, unfortunately, getting defeated by a young Australian. Unusually ended up watching a whole evening of sport whilst with my son. But you know, I just try and have rich and meaningful experiences. I mean, it sounds so glib, but really, in pursuit of that would be the why. And also, as I said, working on my relationships. I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that these relationships are really, really precious, and you know, have 5 really good friends that are people that really recognize who you are and see you and really like you. They're not trying to change you. It's not. I've had sort of competitive friendships that I've recognized in the past, which were not healthy, where people are kind of almost in the Oscar Wildean sense, sort of invested in your failure. You know, it's not enough for you to succeed. Your friends have to fail or whatever. That's not really a friendship. I've got now to the point where I'm long enough in the tooth that I realize and cherish those people that are rooting for me and me rooting for them. So I think it's a Woody Allen quote, isn't it? Forgiveness, friendship and love. I think as you get older, you get more mellow, you get more soulful, more thoughtful, hopefully. And it's important not to retreat into kind of easy binary ways of looking at the world and things generally, and sort of just live with the beauty of the complexity of the world. And as I said, try and in a humble way be of service. Do things that the process of doing them is rich and rewarding and gives your life meaning.
That's my favourite sound in the world, that. The wood pigeon, the humble wood pigeon. Dud. Are you going mad, Neil? No, bear with me. Dud. There's always a little full stop at the end of a wood pigeon's call. You mark my words, next time you're out, listen to one. My sincere thanks to Harry Borden, and I suspect this will not be the only time you hear from him on this show. I hope not anyway, because we had such a lovely chat, and we talked about him coming back, and he was pleased to do so. So you'll hear from Harry in the future. There's so much more to talk about. I really want to dip more into his YouTube channel and those conversations that he's had, actually. I'm reading a couple of great books at the moment. Always keen to hear about the ones that you're up to your eyeballs in and why. But in that I can never really do one book at a time. I never have. I've always had a few on the go. But I now have a journaling shelf. I'm gradually making my way on that note through Johann Harry's Stolen Focus, which is exactly how it sounds in terms of what you would expect the material or the subject to be. And God knows, is that book scarily familiar in terms of our family and how we all and our relationships with social media, etc. Then I have a couple of Anne Lamott's, the American author. There is Bird by Bird, which I mentioned in last week's show, and I bought it as a pack of books, actually 2 books, because it came with almost everything. Notes on Hope, which I'm absolutely loving. There goes the one of the early morning pinstriped expresses. I can see them all squeezed against the window as they make their way to Paddington. Come on, pups, this way. Come on. But yeah, I'm loving Notes on Hope. I'm never quite sure whether you should mark your books. I am a bit of a margin note maker usually, although my newfound bullet journaling ways means that I'm noting about them in my small set of notebooks instead. But there is something I noted from Notes of Hope, which may ring true, I don't know. Let me read it. On talking about the speed of life, she quotes, and this is in the prelude, she quotes T.S. Eliot, who wrote, "Teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still." And Anne writes, we long for this, the sitting still, that is, and yet we check our smartphones every 10 minutes for news and texts and distraction. I thought, what true words. I have a feeling I'm about to read some more home truths, actually, because as much as I'm loath to admit it, to an extent, I still have days where I do exactly that in terms of the, and yet we check our smartphones, etc., etc. And actually, there's something we talk about I talk about with Valerie Jardin on the Extra Mile today. Very apposite this. A tease, I know, but it's fast becoming, I think, for want of a far nicer expression, the Extra Mile is my dumping ground for ideas and things I just love to share in a completely off-the-cuff manner. If you don't mind, I'll come back to that in a little while, because something happened this week that I think is quite pivotal, and it is in the Extra Mile as well. But anyway, some books for you, which I thought I know what you like as you walk these paths. Occasionally you think, I'll just stop and read a chapter of X. Do let me know what you are reading at the moment. Thank you, Extra Milers, for your support. I will talk about this week's Extra Mile shortly. And thank you too to Silver Grain.
Well now, I would hazard a bet that most of us have photographs sitting on hard drives that mean something to us, something special. Photographs we've travelled to faraway places for, or moments of quiet, like the photographs we make in nature, or the very loud and noisy ones. We have these amazing photographs, but we've never really done anything with them since, well, who knows. But they just sit there on the hard drive, looking at you. And that's one of the reasons I like Silver Grain Press. They specialise in helping photographers turn our digital files into something tangible. Beautifully made photo books, exhibition quality prints on Hahnemuller paper, using pigment inks and solid hardwood frames that give your photographs a permanent place beyond a screen. If there are pictures you've been meaning to print, perhaps this can be the nudge. Visit silvergrainpress.com. That's all one word, silvergrainpress.com/photowalk, where you will receive 15% off your first order. That's silvergrainpress.com/photowalk.
If print is the missing relationship in your life, which it has been for mine at times over these 21 years of photographing professionally, coming up for 22 now. I know, not quite as far as some of my guests. Pups, come out of there. Come on, there's barbed wire and stuff. Oh, God, he's so... Honestly. Pups, we're never going to win at Crufts if you can't listen to basic commands. Was it the water you wanted to go in? There's plenty here. Look, we've got a river on one side. Come on. So yes, if print is the missing relationship in your life, I say spend a little time on Silver Grain's website. So back to the mailbag. And then it's time for this month's Teach Me Street feature. Here is a letter from Lars Hegaard. Yes, Hegaard the Dane. Dear Neil, it's that time of year. Well, we're a month and a bit in, actually, from that time of year, but that's my fault, Lars. Where I send you a little something to celebrate the anniversary of the launch of the show back in 2020. This year, because I know you're going easy on the sugar, I've sent you stuff you can't eat. Oh, Lars, you spoil sport. The first thing in your anniversary package, then, is the Danish Rolligan. Now that sounds like some sort of pastry, but it's not. I should explain what this looks like before I read any more of Lars's letter. It's essentially this comical plastic, they come in wood as well, figure, about 5 to 6 inches high it stands, with a huge round head that sits on a spring. And if you slightly move it, it wobbles up and down like it's laughing at you, which it probably is. If you are a child of the 60s or 70s, this little fella, I'm pretty sure, is something you may recognise. He is called a Hoptimist, obviously because he sort of hops up and down in an optimistic fashion. They were created in the late 60s by a designer called Hans Gustav Ehrenreich, I hope I've got that right, who believed that even the smallest things could make people smile. And they're still a very much loved piece of Danish design today. I mean, they come in 100 different colours and styles. I have actually, Lars, believe it or not, bought my next off the back of this, which probably makes me a collector of sorts, doesn't it? Anyway, back to Lars. Your Rolligan, that's the character in the box that he sent me, says Lars, is the calm cousin of the football hooligan. Oh. We don't necessarily win very often, us Danish, and we recently confirmed that with unnecessary clarity, i.e. we did not show up to the World Cup this year, but if we do, we generally try to avoid leaving cities in ruins after a match. It's a habit we gave up many years ago. I assume, and with my maths, Lars, I'd say about 1,000 years ago, if my Viking history from Mr. Campbell's class is serving me correctly. There's a small Scandinavian trap in the word. Oh, there's another pinstriper. That's going the other way. Ah, they look much happier. They're coming out of the big city, into the countryside. There's a small Scandinavian trap in the word. In Danish and Norwegian, rollig means quiet, peaceful, and relaxed. In Swedish, rollig means funny. So he is a rollig figure, this Rolligan. He is a rollig figure in more than one sense. Peaceful, a little amusing, and perhaps just stubborn enough to remain optimistic as he bounces up and down against all odds. And you know what, Lars? I think he is. I've got him perched proudly on my record player lid. Every now and then I give him a nudge, usually when I'm on the phone or something, and watch him bounce up and down, which is a much nicer way to spend time when I'm talking to my accountant. Or if I'm editing in the studio sometimes, I'll give him a little nudge. He had, says Lars, planned to travel to Mexico and North America, but Denmark managed the almost scandalous feat of failing to qualify for what might be the easiest World Cup qualification in history. But we'll move on. I hope he can regain and share his naturally optimistic outlook on life while staying at your place. Well, he is. He does, he has. He's there, Lars, and I love him. Thank you. The second thing I've sent for your show anniversary, a second present, Lars, is the Lego camera. If it can't be sugar, it'll have to be Lego from now on. Oh, I'm actually enjoying this new diet, the diet of Lego. I like the idea that it might gather your family around a table for a few minutes. Whether it ends up as, because you can do the Lego camera, you can build it in several different fashions or designs. Whether it ends up as a video camera or an analog camera is entirely up to you. The important thing, perhaps, is that it has to be assembled slowly, by hand, with the small mistakes and corrections that come with that sort of thing. Going analog in many different ways. Lars, I know what you're proposing. I like the idea of us all being sat around doing this, but I'm not letting the family go anywhere near this. This is my project. And I promise not to apply the Craggle for fans of the original Lego movie, so that I can rebuild it into the video version of itself. But it looks a bit like a rangefinder, I think, on the front of the box. So I'm going to have my Lego camera perched, haven't started it yet, perched very close to Rolligan, my Hoptimistic friend on the record player lid. As for photography, says Lars, it's been a bit of an unproductive year for me. I've travelled quite a bit in Germany and still taken fewer photographs than the year deserved. Work has a particular talent for stealing the hours where you could be practicing your hobby. Even now, back home, it feels as if I'm more involved in work than ever. The keywords are digital transformation, AI, and a new term I didn't know a year ago, digital sovereignty. This is where the little Rolligan comes into play, together with his Hoptimist family. We have to believe in the future. We have to believe that next year will be better. What is the alternative? You're quite right, Lars. Thank you. Thank you for your letter. And thank you for your gifts to celebrate another year of the Photo Walk podcast.
Hot summer morning into middle of the day. It was a hot summer morning into middle of the day. The sun be so hot, I watch my love melt away. Oh yeah, say goodbye, I'm gone, solid.
Just a quick one on something that happened or happens when you listen to it in the Extra Mile show this week. The Extra Mile is our private feed for those who support this podcast with a couple of quid or dollars or goats per square inch every single month. The Extra Mile is what the show is called. And it's on our Patreon channel, though as soon as you are a member, you get a special code. Something amazing happens behind the scenes and you can listen to it on your regular podcast player. It's all very magical, isn't it, pups? It really is. You've been very quiet today. Right on cue. People are going to think I edit this in, but I don't. I really don't. He seems to know now. He's learned the stage act of barking when I need him to. Would you like one of these? Hey? Breakfast time. Oh, how lovely. Kibble for breakfast. I know some people try these to see what they taste like, but I'm afraid I am not one of those dog owners. Or rather, you own me, really, don't you? I think it's the other way around. Here we go. Another express in the background. Come on, we'll go and find some water. We'll find a seat to sit down and I'll try and give you some nice water. I know you'll just choose to dive in the canal and drink that instead. Yes, so the Extra Mile is an extra show, which is, it's planned to be about half an hour a week, but it usually ends up being slightly more. And it's my playground, really, to try out new ideas and present little features for the first time, or just noodle, as they say in the musical world, in a way that's different to the norm. We still walk, but sometimes we do studio stuff as well, and sometimes it's behind the scenes, etc. Anyway, this week I have received a handwritten letter from a particularly important figure in the world of photography. And I take it to a particularly special place to me to read to you, my wonderful Extra Milers. So that is my plug for the Extra Mile this week. You'll find it, if you haven't heard the Extra Mile before, if you go to the website, photowalk.show. I'm being dive bombed by another fly. Go away, please. I'm trying to read something here. If you go to photowalk.show, and there's a button called support the show, but also there's the Extra Mile link as well. You can read all about it, as they say, and you can learn more about how to get the Extra Mile each week and support the show. Keep us walking on these paths. Without your support, honestly, we wouldn't be doing it, would we, pups? Would we? Would we be doing it? What do you think? This is where you bark. Come on, pups. Do the barking thing. Go. Oh, another fly on my leg. That got you barking. God, they're tenacious beasts today. I know, you chase them. Horsefly, don't bother me. Is that song? Horsefly, is it? Hey fly, don't bother me. It should be horsefly, don't bother me. Cool, there's another one. That's a painful little bite, that one. Is it a sting or a bite? Whatever it is, it's not welcome. You are not welcome here, fly. Now, I answered a question last week sent into the show about our equivalent of writer's block in many ways, though it was a bit more nuanced than simply that. I'm not usually the question answerer. I'm usually the question asker. But another one has come flying in, so it has. Hi, Neil. I hope you're feeling well. I'm a new listener after my dad, Richard Rawlings, introduced me to the show. I've been quite enjoying it. Don't push yourself. Quite is enough for the moment. Often listening while out running through the woods near my home. You see, people listen to this show in many different ways. I know originally the thought was that you would listen while you were photographing. But as I said earlier, there's just as many people with their hands in a washing up bowl. I've wanted to pose a question which might give away my early stage of progress in photography and perhaps be a little dated in the age of AI, which I hope might spur some conversation. The question is, when does photography end and digital art start? It was a conversation my dad and I had several years ago. I also question whether lots of manipulation really matters, so long as you produce the image you want. Either way, very keen to hear people's thoughts on this one. Best wishes from Chris. Right, Chris, thank you. I am going to have a bash at it. Then open the phone lines, as I used to say in radio, or in this case, of course, email. Oh, before I do, though, Chris, first of all, welcome to our special community, and I thank your dad for bringing you in, as it were. I don't think, as you would agree, I am sure, that this question has one easy silver bullet style answer. In fact, I suspect if you asked, 20 photographers, you get 55 answers. So this one is, a just for me moment. So just for me, photography, if we dial it right back to what photography means, I think it starts with a camera that records something that actually exists in front of your lens. That, for me, is real photography. Period. And I know that there will be many people in a pub who would argue with me on that, so to them I say this. I can't hear what you're saying on account of the fact I've just stuffed 2 cheesy Wotsits from the bar in each of my ears. On the question of when does photography become something else, in your case, or question, digital art, well, it's nuanced to a degree, isn't it? But long before Photoshop and AI, people were dodging and burning and doing all those magical things in the darkroom. They were changing contrast and cropping and masking skies, and I suppose you could even include the choice of different papers and film, but none of that felt controversial. I don't think anybody used to question whether it was a real photograph. You were changing stuff, but it was still somehow purist photography. Nobody needed to stuff cheesy Wotsits in their ears to win that argument in a bar. It was just universally accepted as photography. But where it starts to become something else for me is when I'm creating parts of a picture that were never there in the first place. I don't do that. I'm not clever enough on Photoshop or any other gizmos to really do that well. Somebody asked me recently if I could crop out one person and put another person in a wedding photograph, and I had to go and sit down in a dark corner and rock for a while to that suggestion. But that's where my head begins to say, now I'm making, or I would be making digital art rather than making a photograph. So yeah, it's not something I'm very competent in doing. And I don't really have any great desire to become competent in that field. Yeah, I've created some AI images, just little comical ones. But as for changing a photograph and making it digital art, there's some great stuff out there, isn't there? There really is. But it's just not something that I can do. But I will say this, I don't think and this might be a bit controversial, I don't think one necessarily is better than the other. They're just different. They're different creative pursuits. If somebody creates, it's like the photography versus painting thing, isn't it? They're wholly different pursuits. They are skill sets in and of themselves. If somebody creates an incredible piece of digital art, brilliant. If somebody creates an incredibly fantastic photograph that needs very little doing to it afterwards, that's brilliant too. The only, I suppose is it a caveat? I don't know. This is the important bit for me, is that we're honest about which one we're looking at and what's happened to it. I.e., don't try and pass one off as something else. And then you can, those pinstriped expresses, thick and fast today. I wonder what they'd say about this on the train. But then I think if you do it that way, then you can let the viewer make their mind up whether it's pure enough, for them, that is, to be a photograph. Mind you, that's just where I happen to stand today. Ask me again in 5 years' time, and AI may well have shuffled my thinking around completely. Probably by then, AI will have grown arms and be able to physically take the cheesy wotsits out of my ears. Anyway, over to you, including the other listener. Where do you think this line sits, or has it disappeared altogether? And have I answered this question correctly, or properly? Or have I graded another C-, which I was particularly good at doing in my school days? Don't tell anyone. I love these bits of the walk, going by the lock gates, the water just flowing into the lock. Let me get don't go too close, pups. Come on, away. I'm not sure I want to dive into that. People do dive into locks. It's not the safest thing in the world to do. So let me get a picture. F4, 160 ISO. There we go. Not sure if you could even hear the shutter click above the water there. Are you sitting down, pups? Come on. Don't sit down on the job. I know. The famous, not so famous last letter of the show to come soon. If you would like to write in, then write to stories. Pups, can I finish this? stories@photowalk.show. On the contact page, there are all the ways you can write in. A few ideas in case you have writer's block, in terms of, I really want to write in, but what can I write about? And there's some instructions too on how to send your images in, sizes of image and so on and so forth. Right, time for this month's Teach Me Street with Valerie Jardin, where you send in your pictures and Valerie has a noodle over them with some ideas, some suggestions perhaps on how to improve your street. So Valerie Jardin with this month's Teach Me Street.
We've only got one set of pictures, and the reason for that, I've got plenty left in the list for us to go over before Christmas. We're going to be okay, I think. But I've only picked on Christopher Parsons for this particular one because he's written something about each one of the images, which will be on the show page today, of course. And I just thought that was a really nice way. The slightly longer route in terms of the information, but I thought that was really cool, and that would give you something to grab hold of as well to understand where he is with each one of these images. He's said, I'd be particularly interested in how Valerie assesses these pictures from a judging perspective. By way of context, as you know, he says, and I do know this, I take my photography fairly seriously as an amateur and have recently submitted some images to a street photograph competition. So he wants to know what stands out, what doesn't. The images are judged as single images, and so he's not trying to provide a narrative across the three. So I thought that was quite important. They're not necessarily supposed to talk to each other. So the first one is the one with it's on the newsstand. It's all the newspapers with the person deeply in the shadows. Small newsstands, he says, remain scattered. throughout the old city, often positioned near bus stops and sustained by regular patrons moving through the area. Here, the newspapers are held behind mesh and clipped into place, presenting the media as controlled and protected. In that sense, the image reflects both the persistence and defensiveness of these spaces. You see, he's a thinker, Valerie. So what's your thoughts?
I love just the unseen part of this, and it totally fits in, what I've been teaching and my newly released book, The Unseen Subject, where what you don't see almost tells you more than what you actually see, and the deep shadow, but the shoulder, the arm, and then looks like the gentleman is holding something, maybe a newspaper
or book
something,
yeah.
or book.
Yeah.
But you just have the hint of the subject in the really deep shadows, and I love deep shadows. I know a lot of time people are tempted to bring details out of the shadows, but it kills the mood. And here it's spot on. I almost wish there was just a little, like the rim of a hat. But he probably wasn't wearing a hat. Otherwise, they would be. Imagine that on top of that shoulder, just the rim of a hat, and the light would have made it
Do you know
perfection.
what? I'll tell you what, running in and giving him a trilby would have been a moment, wouldn't it? Have a hat.
So, great shot. I love
shot.
this. I think people are looking of more and more ways to make compelling photographs of people without revealing their identity. It's becoming more and more of a concern for people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways to do it.
I'm interested in this thing you say about shadows, because I don't worry, particularly with my wedding work, and when it's deep into the night or there's some photographs on one of those typical British winter days where things fall into dark really quite easily, I don't bother about trying to rescue them at all, and I let those blacks go to nothing, those shadows.
That's beautiful.
And I think you're the same, aren't you? You've always
absolutely.
said that you're not worried about drawing stuff out of the shadows.
I don't worry about blowing out highlights or deep shadows. I actually push both in camera.
Now, the next one, I love this, but I'll be interested to know what you think. It's at an airport, and there's quite a lot going on within the image, but I'm going to... again, it's going to be on the website. Let me read a couple of words. He says that airports operate as spaces of transition where movement, waiting and passage overlap. In this image, that condition is reflected in the structure of the scene itself. Layers of glass, reflection and architecture compress multiple visual fields into a single frame with figures suspended between departure and arrival. It's a going away and coming home story in many respects, isn't it?
Yeah, and there the guy has the hat that we needed on the other picture.
Oh yeah, yes, we have.
So, there's a tiny silhouette, but the eye is drawn immediately to the human element, even though it's somebody through a glass walkway, and it stands out really well. It's dynamic, there's separation, it's blown out and behind him, which makes the silhouette stand out even more. And then you have hints of other passengers in the shadows waiting, and then the airplane reflecting. So there's a lot of good stuff there as well. Yeah, and in the same theme of the unseen subject. Yeah.
There's mystery in this as well, in that you're
absolutely.
thinking, right, what's going on here? And I quite like a picture where you think, right, what's happening here then? Where's that? Is that a reflection, or is that something through a piece of glass? And I like images like that.
Yeah, it's somebody actually walking down a jetway. Now, if you enlarge it, they have luggage. They're walking away and they're walking down the jetway. Yeah, It's really cool.
Now, if this had been in colour, it's not. It's black and white. All three of these images are black and white. What would you have said? I mean, of course, you don't know what colours would have been there, but
no. Usually, when you have bright highlights, deep shadows, black and white will always be stronger, unless really there is a story about a color in there, like a splash of yellow or something that would really have drawn the attention to the viewer. I think these are totally black and white. I would have shot them in camera black and white without hesitation.
Do you ever photograph at airports? It's one of the places I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a Heathrow photographer, and for years he was the Heathrow photographer. And I thought that was possibly the best photographic job because, yeah, he was there really to grab photographs of the celebs coming and going, but he collected so much of daily life as well around the airport.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a fun thing to do. I've done it many times. It's usually you have a lot of glass, so you have a lot of opportunities for silhouettes. And I've practiced that over the years. It's a good way to pass some time when you're waiting, and absolutely, I've never had any problem. And I've photographed airports where you have guards walking around with semi-automatics, and you pass them with your camera. No one has ever said anything, So yeah,
I should have said, by the way, the first image, the shadow one, was from Montevideo. And that was taken last year. Can you guess the airport on this one? Can you?
No, it could be pretty much.
It could be a silly question, isn't it?
It could be in Paris because it says Total Énergie. But
there we go. Good guess. Charles de Gaulle.
Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah. This year. But there we go. Cracking image. I love that one. Now the last one. I like the coming and going in this again. He's very good. I think Christopher is excellent at this, at capturing the sort of the comings and goings of life, people busying themselves. And that's what I particularly like about this one. Let me read a little bit about it. It's Front and University Toronto, taken this year. Pedestrians moving through the frame in intersecting paths. Their trajectories briefly aligning without ever converging, which is important. You've told me about trying to keep people, so they're not overlapping. Several figures are absorbed in their phones, which I know is one of your great loves. Their attention directed away from the shared space they occupy. The scene suggests a choreography without coordination. Each individual, this is very poetic, Valerie, each individual moving according to a private rhythm. When I grow up, I want to write like Christopher.
So this picture, to me, the interesting subject is the woman on the right, probably because she's the one that's looking out and away, and she's walking out of the frame. I like the energy. It's a little busy for my taste, but I like the wide angle feel of it, and the fact that there is, as people are walking in separate direction, it gives a little tension. And I like the tension here. So I think it worked well. I don't like it as much as the other two.
Is that the busyness thing?
For me it's the busyness thing.
Okay.
For a busy scene, I think it's well done. Yeah. It's not what I go after. So that's why if you enter competition, I think we've talked about that before. If you enter competition, make sure there are multiple judges, not just one.
Well, yeah, but how would you know that?
Well, usually they tell you who is judging the competition. And if you do, because I judge competition all the time, a jury competition all the time. You say judge or jury? Judging seems harsh. Jury competitions all the time where I'm the only one. So if it's only one judge, make sure you see their style, because that's how they're going to respond to the work. It's so subjective. You have to know who will look at the work. So, but if you have several, and I've done this with a panel of 5 or 6 judges, where we see hundreds of pictures and we have to select 10, for example. And when you know that there is one that overlaps all 6 jurors, that's a good sign. That is a strong photograph, because in that panel, there will be a color photographer, there will be a black and white photographer, someone who likes layers, one like me who likes more clean composition. So for one photograph that will trigger an emotion in a full panel, then you have strong work. Otherwise, it is so subjective. Never take it poorly if you don't make it into a competition with one juror, because it is so subjective.
I haven't entered a competition for, can't remember, a long time. Why are competitions important? Because I know there's two schools of thought on this, some totally different directions. Some people say it's not important. Who needs people to judge your work? And other people say, well, it's a great way of checking you're on course.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's good. It's a little ego boost that we need once in a while, right? But know that competition are the best way to make money in photography. So check what competition it is.
Yeah.
Where does the money go to? Is it going to partially to a good cause, or is it all going in someone's pocket? And some of the biggest ones are not really legit, so they don't really mean much.
The podcasting is full of them. I recently got one that I waxed lyrical about the Photo Walk podcast. And I thought, oh, okay then. Well, I'll send it. And then they said, it'll be $300, please. And it was just going into their coffers. It wasn't anywhere else. But I said, I'll have a bit of that, please. And I gave your address for the bill.
Thanks.
And my thanks to Valerie Jardin for this month's Teach Me Street. If you would like to send some pictures in for Valerie to review and noodle over, as I say, then send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. If you want to write a little about each of the images, please feel free. I think that's sometimes very helpful for us to understand what you were feeling or thinking or seeing when you were making your photographs. And all those that are read out will receive one of Valerie's ebooks. There's many ebooks actually on her website. Will receive one of Valerie's ebooks free of charge. Before the famous, not so famous last letter of the week, a quick thank you to the people who keep this show on the road, or the path, as it were. Neil Ford wrestles with my weekly technical mishaps. I regularly hear him say or sigh at my suggestions. Andrea Gilpin keeps Instagram fed. Kelly Mitchell looks after Facebook, Kelvin Brown steers the Flickr group, and Michael Brennan curates the Spotify playlist. So if you're ever wondering what that piece of music was from an old episode, chances are he's already found it for you. If you haven't grabbed your copy yet, the first edition of Reflections, our show zine, is on sale. We are close to having no more physical copies left now. You can buy it either as a physical copy or as an ebook with accompanying voice from yours truly. So go to photowalk.show, hit the store button. We are in early days with the zine, so you will be on this adventure with us. Thank you to all those that have bought one so far. Come on, pups. Have you got a stick of the day? It's getting warm, I know. The play-out song in a moment, a song just to think about what's been said today, see out the last few steps of your walk with me. And this week it's the very cheekily titled Son of a Beach, as in the sandy stuff. I've absolutely fallen head over for this song, probably because I've had a number of very sunny drives this week, and I've been playing this one with the light flickering through the trees into the cab as I drive. It's as they say in New York, perfect. It's by a band called The Polarity, and it makes me want to work in music radio again with new music. Right, are we ready for this?
It's the last letter of the show. The last letter of the show.
It's from Phil Ferris, a.k.a. Phil, the Ferris wheel of thinking. And just like those in the World Cup who are claiming their golden boot prizes for the most goals scored or the most roll over and look like you've been slain in a gladiator ring prize, Phil the Ferris wheel of thinking is taking on this gladiatorial battle with Hegaard the Dane, I think, for most letters to be read out. It's like Ronaldo versus Messi, with less tears and far less pouting. Hi Neil, says Phil. I wrote this several times so far, trying to find a succinct but witty way to say it, and I still can't pull it off. So let me just say it plain. Uh-oh. Thank you for your very kind featuring of me in your podcast of the week before last. This might be a couple of weeks before that, actually, and dragging me around on the couch of flattery. I'm very grateful for my new show moniker. I think the last person to promote me in such a way was my dear old mum. And as Mum is no longer around in person, I am wondering if I should recruit someone to take on the role. In which case, I have a question for you. How much pocket money do you issue? Your recent reference to your tortoise brought up a memory for me. As a child of 8 or 9, I used to study tortoises. See, these things you don't know about people, Phil. Well, study could be too strong a term, actually. The lounge in our cottage-sized home at that time used to look out on a very long garden made up of unfenced strips belonging to each of 4 houses near us. One strip was taken up by a very long, low-level rabbit hutch type run. Think chicken wire and wood. It wasn't for rabbits, though. It was for tortoises to wander around in during the summer. I'd spend hours just watching these animals wander around sedately, stopping to munch upon provided dandelion leaves. What I did not realise at the time was that the older gentleman who tended the tortoises was a celebrity. There was a television show I became a huge fan of around the age of 10 called Blue Peter, and I watched it in its incarnation featuring my favourite of the male presenters, John Noakes. Oh, yes. That shows your age when you pick out Blue Peter presenters. That obviously meant something to you in your youth. And my crush on Leslie Judd. Phil, you old dog, you. Although I'll say this only to your ears, Phil, I did have a Blue Peter crush too. And for anyone outside the UK thinking this sounds like some kind of weird show for kids, the emblem was a ship, a sort of pirate ship, I think. I think that was the idea, and it was called Blue Peter. In addition to presenters, the show had certain pets that regularly featured. Johnny had a sheepdog called Shep. He did. And there was a tortoise. See, I wonder where this was going in the tortoise story. A tortoise called Fred. Now, I don't know whether you remember this, Neil, but this was a time when they determined that Fred was actually she. And so they felt the need to add the letter A to make it Frida. Sexing tortoises is a tricky business, apparently. An expert was brought onto the show each year to talk about how to handle your tortoise's hibernation, and also the point when it came out of hibernation. We were living in an age when the ownership of tortoises was not a matter of licenses. Do I need a licence for George? For my George? I did not realise that. Who could be Georgina, I suppose. I've never really had a close enough look. The expert employed by Blue Peter at the time to come onto the show to talk about these tortoises was somebody called Mr. Wright. The same Mr. Wright whose, now the story's coming together, whose tortoises strolled up and down outside of our lounge window. I hardly ever spoke with him and didn't recognise him on the telly. They weren't big sets back then in those days, 1960s, black and white and so on. While not a claim to true fame, I suppose, in 6 degrees of separation terms, that works for me. It works for me as well, Phil, because this is 6 degrees in full effect. Thank you so much for this. And while you listen to the song, I'm going to finish up this walk, get Barney back home, make a cuppa, and try and ring this Mr. Wright, who I am hoping, like tortoises, lives to 150, so he can come and check out my wonderful George, or Georgie, or Georgina, or Georgette, or Georgia, or I'm running out now.
All of my ties, and we wanted to
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.